The General Assembly of the United Nations in 1948 established a Palestine Conciliation Commission to deal with the whole complex of problems which had arisen between Israel and the Arab states. They were to serve as mediators, and the parties were also asked in the resolution if they wished to go operate directly, in terms of direct contact, with a view to finding a solution of all these problems. Within the context of this resolution, the refugee problem is referred to. The Commission is supposed to study the possibilities either of repatriation or of resettlement or of compensation, but all this in part of a general context of a peace settlement. The resolution talks of return of refugees as soon as practicable, and it also talks of those refugees who wish to live in peace. This resolution has been dead now since 1948. It has been dead, yes, it has been dead because the Arabs have never announced that they would live in peace with Israel. They refused to negotiate directly. And the PCC, in fact, has been a defunct body for many years now. Now, what is our position on this? The Arab refugee problem, Professor, is one of a whole complex of refugee problems. I believe that since 1940, some 35 million people have been uprooted across the world.
Yes.
Korea and Vietnam, Germany, Finland.
Yeah.
Nearly all of these problems either have been solved or approaching solution. And in no case has the solution been through repatriation, but rather through absorption. Now, what have we said? We have said that we are prepared to pay full compensation. We have said we are prepared to consider a limited repatriation within a framework, reunion of families. But the problem will never move unless the Arab governments are prepared to cooperate in alleviating the suffering of the refugees. The fact is, our figures, by the way, of the refugees are about 550,000. We have basis to assume that some 160,000 have been absorbed. This is a unique problem. There's no economic difficulty. Money has been voted by the United Nations. There's a promise of the United States government for international loan. There's no social problem because they're living among their people. The Arab living today in a camp in Transjordan, he's not a Pole living in Britain. He's living in his own surroundings, part of the environment of a rising Arab nationalism, religious, cultural, identity of background, and psychological. The problem will never move until the Arab governments are prepared to cooperate in a humanitarian solution. I notice, Professor, that you yourself have criticized the Arab governments.
I have, yes.
And you have said very rightly, and talking of suffering, referring back to our first part of the conversation, why don't they take them out of this parasitic existence? Why don't they set them up in farms and in villages and homes? Why keep them there as a political weapon? You who scan history over thousands of years, do you know of any other case, any precedent of holding hundreds of thousands of people as political hostage in camps, parasitic, no future, quenching the very sense of creativeness in them? For what purpose? So they can be ready as part of a political pawn for some ultimate program to exterminate Israel, God forbid. Is that more? Is that an approach? Have you read the Secretary General of the United Nations, his report last year? He views the solution in terms of economic integration to the area. We will, of course, play our part in it. We are very upset at this continued humanitarian problem. But it's not within our hands. We can't solve it. In Israel now, there are 10% Arabs, 200,000. They enjoy every right with their fellow Jewish citizens. Do you want us to take back people who've been nurtured on hate for 13 years on the basis of a resolution of 1948 talking of those wishing to live in peace, nurtured on hate and vengeance and destruction, take them back into our state when we have 10% Arab population? For what? They can rip us apart? They should be schizophrenic? Take them out of a total Arab environment where they live, where they can create, economically, socially, religiously, but psychologically bring them in to be a minority in a Jewish state, and this will help the problem of the Middle East. There is money, there is land, there is water. All that is needed is a part of that humanitarian benevolence and sense of duty to which you referred. Professor Toynbee, in 1948, the war of aggression unleashed on us created two refugee problems. One related to some 550,000 Arabs. The other related to some 400,000 Jews and 70,000 Arabs. We have settled the second problem. We've absorbed over 400,000 Jews from Arab countries who were there of longer standing than the same Arabs in Palestine. We've settled them, we've taken them in as brothers, and we have settled 70,000 Arab refugees in the country. The only Arab refugees which have been struck off from on our rolls are those which we have taken into our economy. The other problem has not moved, not because there's no money, not because there's no possibility, but purely because a humanitarian problem is being put into a totally political context of animosity and hatred. And the feelings of these poor people and their future, their very life, is being sacrificed on what? Some demagogic ambition of control and rule throughout the Middle East. Every international assessment of it, every report has recommended a movement in the direction of economic integration, of broadening economic possibilities, and we will play our part. There's no question on that. We long to see the problem solved as you do, but it will not be solved by formulas, will not be solved within a context where they refuse to talk to us, will not be solved when these refugees are being prepared to destroy us. Only a few months ago, last month, Professor Toynbee, a representative of the Arab refugees appeared in the United Nations. What did he speak about? The destruction of Israel, the extermination of Israel. He was probably told to do so by a certain government in the Middle East. He said so. So you tell us now, 48 they talked of coming back in peace. Now take them back after 13 years and he says he wants to destroy you. Why not? Let him come in and rip you apart. Please commit suicide, so at least the Arab armies won't have to overwhelm you from without. That, sir, I think in the scan of history you will find no nation has been prepared to do. And since you said earlier that in certain respects we belong to a whole category of nations in our behavior, in this respect too, we will not commit suicide.
I think there are 2 points in what the ambassador has said. One is repatriation, and the other is using refugees as pawns. I think there is an inconsistency in the Israeli stand. You claim for Jews repatriation into Palestine, though it's since as long ago as 135 AD, there's been no solid Jewish population in Palestine, though I agree with the ambassador, there always have been Jews in Palestine as a minority, a rather small minority. And though since, I think, 63 or 64 BC, there haven't been a Jewish state in Palestine. And you've claimed repatriation not in the terms of the Balfour Declaration, a Jewish national home, but not a state, but in the extreme form of a state. But at the same time, you deny to the Arabs who were forced out of Palestine, of the Israeli part of Palestine, as recently as 1948, the very thing that you claim as the central claim of the Jewish people. That is inconsistent. Then, using refugees as pawns, I have had opportunities of talking to representatives of the Arab states within the last few years, and by the way, I think the Zionist organization and the Israel government are rather living in a glass house about this question of using refugees as pawns, because I think some pretty telling comparisons could be made between their use of Jewish refugees as pawns and the Arab government's use of Arab refugees as pawns. I think both things are detestable things to do to people in the distress that refugees are in, and I think both the Israelis and Zionists and the Arab states have been guilty of this really disgusting thing to do. When I've talked, as I've had opportunities of talking with the Arab states, I have pointed out the policy of the West German government since the war. As you can see, I'm not partial to Germans particularly, certainly not partial to Nazis. I've no reason to be particularly friendly to Germans. But I have pointed out that the West German government since the war has been more wise as well as more humane. It's more important to be humane than to be wise than the governments of the Arab states since 1948. The West German government had, I suppose, received, what the numbers run to, 6 million, 8 million, something? 9 million refugees from, partly from Eastern Germany, partly from those territories that were part of Germany before the Second World War, which are now parts of Poland and the Soviet Union. The West German government, as far as I know, has not relinquished its claim to 1 inch of territories that were German east of the present boundary of Western Germany, to German before the Second World War. I'm not going to the question as to whether the German claims to recover those territories are good or bad. That doesn't really concern us here. But my point is that the West Germans have separated, and this I think they were thoroughly right, the question of claims to territory which the refugees come from, and what to do about the refugees meanwhile. And Western Germany, to her credit, of her heart and her head, has taken the humane and sensible line of absorbing the refugees without renouncing claims to these refugees' homes and territory into her life and into her industry. And one of the reasons why Western Germany is prosperous and powerful now is that she has given these refugees a chance of work, and that means a chance of happiness and prosperity. And her voice is powerful among the nations now because of that. And I've said to the Arab states, why don't you do that? You don't have to relinquish the claim of the Palestinian Arabs to Palestine by absorbing them at present into your industry. You'll be in a stronger position to press your claim later. I'm sorry that they don't take this line, which I think it's silly of them politically, but I'm much more concerned with the humanities side. But I do think, as I said, Israel is living in a glass house in drawing attention to this particular side of the Arab states policy, because I think that many things can be said, especially about the time immediately after the end of the World War, about Jewish refugees who were directed for political or not humanitarian reasons to Palestine, when they could have had immediate homes and a much better future, I would say, in Australia or in the North American continent. And I think politics were played with the Jewish refugees, just as they're being played now with the Arab refugees. I condemn both.